Thank you for coming. I'm Ben Aveling. Welcome to The Vulnerability in Your Pocket. If you want to follow me on social media, I do not do Twitter, but you can find me on Mastodon at infosec.exchange, Ben Aveling. Anything I say today, my opinion, nothing to do with my company. It's purely my opinion and does not represent the position of my employer. First, the bad news. Your phone is insecure. It's insecure not because of anything that's wrong with your phone, but because of the way telecommunication networks have evolved. You can't fix it. There are some things you can do to reduce your risk. There are also things you can do to increase your risk. This will not surprise you. Of course, telcos talk to each other. They have to get your phone calls through, to get your SMS through, to get your data through. But they don't just send user data. They also have a meta conversation about the user data. They need to say, does anybody have this user in their network? I've got this user. I've got a phone call for this user. I've got an SMS for this user. This is all signalling information without which you could not send SMSs to somebody on a different telco. You couldn't do roaming. Billing would have trouble. One of the main protocols used for doing this, you may have heard of, you may not have heard of, is SS7. It has other names in other countries. SS7 signalling system number 7. It's old. Not quite as old as I am. Older than the internet, older than mobile phones. It was developed for landlines in an era where to make a phone call, you had to effectively reconfigure bits of the network to connect the two phones together. But it's evolved and it's been extended, and it now allows telcos to provide all of these features and far more. SS7 was used in 2G, still used in 2G, still used in 3G. When 4G was developed, they knew there were a lot of problems with SS7, and they fixed some of them. They improved the encryption. It's still not great, but 4G is like 3G only. Diameter is for 4G, what SS7 is for 3G. Some of you may be thinking, hey, I know the name diameter, that's used for logging into computers. Yes, it is the same protocol. It does a lot more than most people realise. I mentioned roaming. You probably don't have to think about roaming to use it, but there's a lot happening under the covers. When you connect to a network that's not your normal network, it has to connect back to your network and say, hey, I've got your user over here. Is their credit good? Am I going to get paid if I put their phone calls through? And then your home network will say, yeah, it's fine. They can make a phone call, send it to me, and I'll send it to the end destination. So if you're roaming in Australia and you call somebody in Australia, your phone call quite probably comes back to your home country and then goes all the way to Australia, which is one of the reasons roaming is expensive. But there's a lot of conversation between telcos behind the scenes to make this all happen. Let's go back. Insert wavy lines here. Before there was SS7, there was SS6. Before there was SS6, there was SS5. SS5 used what's called in-band signalling. They actually played tones of a specific pitch in the audible spectrum. And that worked well enough until people worked out that they could play their own tones with the right equipment. If you had whistle out of a cereal box, you could use that to persuade the exchange that your phone call had ended, so it would stop billing you while your phone call continued, which was very nice for you because you got free phone calls to anywhere in the world. This then evolved into blue boxes and all sorts of other freaking boxes, PHR, and Steve Wozniak and Apple were actually quite invested in this very early on, but that's a long conversation. The problem was that users had access to signalling data. So SS7 moved the signalling data, SS6 moved the signalling data onto a separate system. Users can't get to it. Everything's now happy. For a while. 1975, this was good enough. The only people who had access to the SS7 system were telcos. So they didn't need encryption. Encryption was expensive then too. Nobody would have even thought about doing it. Diameter, they included encryption, but what they didn't fix was authentication. So you still didn't really have a lot of control over where it was coming from. If you can get into the network, and it's not trivial to do it, but it's not impossible to do it, you can send SS7 messages, you can send diameter messages. Telcos sell access to these networks. Access gets stolen. Telcos cooperate with the local authorities. If your government says, hey, we need you to send a couple of SS7 messages for us, your telco is probably going to cooperate because they have to. There are legitimate uses for this. If you get a two-factor authentication from an SMS, it's probably not because your bank has worked out which of the however many telcos there are in the country. They will go through aggregators. So you can get two-factor-based SMSs. You can also get spam. Banks use this for fraud prevention. They will say, where is this user? And they can use this to diagnose impossible travel. If 1 minute you're in Galway and then the next minute you're in Russia, something dodgy's happened. They can also be used for all sorts of undesirable things. If your telco gets told, hey, my user's in Russia, there's an SMS comes through, send it to me. Probably be about 6 digits. Thank you for that. So this is one way that cybercriminals get around 2FA. Similar things can be used to intercept phone calls. It can even be done with SIM swapping, and it can be done to locate people for espionage, for sort of international stalking. Criminal groups have used this to work out where reporters are. There's almost certainly people being killed based on this sort of metadata. And that sort of geolocation is probably the most common abuse because it's also one of the hardest to prevent. 5G. These problems are now well known. So 5G comes in, there's a lot of people working on the security. It's got better encryption in more places. It's got mutual authentication. So when your phone connects to a visited network, the visited network says to the home network, I've got your user here, and there's an exchange of information so that they really do know mutual authentication, phone authenticates to the network, network authenticates to the phone. It's much harder. The visited network can't say, I've got your user here on my 5G network, if they don't. It also defeats IMSI catching. Some of you may have heard of IMSI catching. IMSI catching is basically fake base stations. Again, it has different names in different places. If you can get your fake base station so that it's got a stronger signal, it'll be preferred. Perhaps you might even DDoS the real base station. It's probably most often used by law enforcement, sometimes with a warrant, sometimes without a warrant. So tech companies don't like having their users being compromised. So 5G, because you've got the mutual authentication and you've also got concealed identifiers, so it's very hard to get information about using 5G because your identifier is concealed. That's not sent in any way which is easy to access, and it changes. So you don't know whose phone is trying to connect to the fake base station. Happy days? Who's heard of downgrade attacks? If the fake base station says, I only speak 4G, it's quite likely your phone goes, oh, all right, I can use 4G. If the malicious visited network says, here's the user, oh, they're not on my 5G network, then the home network's got no good way of knowing just from that information that the user is not in the visited network. So while we have 3G, while we have 4G, these attacks will continue to work. Simple. We just need to get rid of 3G and 4G, right? We're still using 2G. Russia stopped using 1G in 2017. 3G, the switch-off has started. Some Irish telcos have switched off 3G, some haven't. Some countries have, most haven't. 3G's been with us for 20 years. 4G could last 20 years, could last more. While these networks are still used, these downgrade attacks will still be possible. Everybody feeling cheerful yet? When a threat emerges, it becomes worth investing in defences. Telcos do have access to firewalls. They're called firewalls. They're more like proxies. It's not like they can block a particular port, but they will look at some of the different commands that are sent and try to work out, should I actually respond to this, or is this suspicious? So they can use improbable travel, they can use volume, and it's a continual game of leapfrog where the attackers try to find new ways to abuse these protocols, and these are big and complicated protocols with lots of messages in them. It's a little bit like trying to stop somebody using ping on a network. There's always another way to send a ping request. But there's this game of catch up and stay ahead. So there's a limit on the scale of this, but it's never going to be completely eliminated using firewalls. Not all telcos have firewalls. And if you're genuinely roaming, or if your telco can't tell if you're roaming, then they've sort of got to kind of trust what they're told. You can't completely protect yourself. The attack doesn't even have to arrive at your phone. You can say, okay, I'm not going to use SMS 2FA, but if somebody's trying to break into your account, they're the ones that decide a 2FA message is going to be sent. So it's not, the message won't reach you, but you won't even know that that message has been sent. The criminal will just authenticate, forgot my password, send me a new one with 2FA, happy day. Turning off your phone doesn't help. Your phone's not involved in this conversation. Turning off your phone just means that your telco has less ways of knowing where you are. I'm not saying they're going to use that information to protect you, but maybe they will. If you take it away, that's just one less defence. What you can do, all you can do, is reduce the attack factor. So if you're in a position of saying, am I going to use SMS? Am I going to sign up something that uses SMS? And you don't have to. Maybe you don't. If you do get SMSs that are sus, don't trust them. If you're communicating with somebody else and you want that conversation to stay private, don't use SMS. Prefer an encrypted end-to-end messaging system. A lot of people recommend Signal. There's some other ones that are recommended too. A lot of people recommend Telegraph because a lot of people have put a lot of effort into persuading people that Telegraph is secure. Telegraph's not end-to-end encrypted. It's not as good a choice as some people will tell you. There are things that you can do to make life better or worse, just in general, regardless of how the attack comes in. If you have an iPhone or a good quality Android, then you'll be getting sent updates. If you have a cheap Android, you may never get a security update in the life of the phone, which means that all the vulnerabilities that are there when the phone was made will still be on the phone. Install those updates when they're offered. There is an operating system called Graphene OS. There's a couple of operating systems that are designed to be installed on Androids. It's not for the home user yet, but they are there if you feel you have the need. People will tell you that iPhones are more secure than Androids, and that's debatable. But what's not up for debate is that there's a lot more malware on Androids than on iPhones. And the reason for that is sideloading. The app stores are pretty good. Apple is probably better than Google, but they're both, it's like 99, 98, and then sideloading's down about 5%. Sideloading is the fast track to getting malware. Don't root your phone, because then it makes it so much easier for malware to move sideways. Well, the protection on the sandboxing on your phone is there to protect apps from each other. If you root your phone, you've bypassed it. If you have a professional reason to root your phone, I remember the sort of room I'm in, have 2 phones. Do not have your banking details on the phone that you've rooted, however good your reasons are for rooting it. Questions you might anticipate. WhatsApp. With WhatsApp, the user data is protected. WhatsApp cannot see what's inside the messages you send. They cannot get at the conversations that you have. But they know who you're talking to. They know who you're sending messages to. As one of the Americans said, we kill people based on metadata. Metadata is enough to build a network of who your connections are. If your connections are dodgy, then it's pretty easy to tell that you're dodgy. Now, this doesn't mean that you shouldn't use WhatsApp. It's all about knowing what information you're putting out there and accepting the risks that you're taking. VPNs. VPN into work makes perfect sense. Not as necessary as it used to be, because a lot of the applications your work offers will probably be secured anyway. Free VPN is worse than no VPN. There's almost nothing on the web now that's not encrypted. Simply using a VPN is a layer of encryption on encryption. It doesn't help, but it means that you're sending all of your metadata, because VPN can't protect your metadata. You still need to know where the traffic is going from and to. But it means it's just a single place where somebody, out of the goodness of their heart, is forwarding on your data. And why are they doing that? Well, who knows? Antivirus. It's probably a good idea on an Android. Doesn't do much on an iPhone, because sandboxing apps can't interfere with each other. So, and that's what antivirus does. It's one app checking on the other apps. Using a local SIM when overseas, well, on the one hand, you're not roaming. On the other hand, you're now with the telco that you don't know and possibly may or may not have as much protection as the Irish telcos do. Throwing your phone in the river won't work. It just makes it harder for your own telco to know whether or not you're roaming. To recap, SS7, diameter, 3G, 4G, they are vulnerable for reasons that are not going to go away. Those protocols are not going to go away either. 3G, 4G will be with us for a long time yet. 5G is quite secure. Maybe tomorrow, maybe I'll walk out of here and I'll discover, oh yeah, somebody's broken 5G. That's always a danger, but so far it still seems to be secure. There are things you can do to reduce your exposure, even if you can't eliminate it. Telcos do what they can, most of them, we hope. Companies, if you have the option to not send SMS 2FA, you should take it. A lot of companies don't have that option because not all of their users have smartphones, but as things evolve, we may get to a situation where that becomes more practical. And for some situations, for your own company where you know people have smartphones, you should probably be looking at Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator and other solutions. Questions? Yep, call it out.
Thank you very much for the great presentation, especially for advice from your phone. It seems that this iPhone 16 was for
environmentally damaging too.
Advice. Do you see any trends for by those which you mentioned? This is seminal. Do you see the trends that these mobile network specific attacks will be evolving as opposed to classic IP or application level and cheaper, right? And this telco attacks. Do you see we will see 5G breaking everywhere? It's becoming an issue.
So, do I see 5G becoming broken?
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know. There's been a lot of work going into 5G to make it secure. 5G relies on web services for its communications, so it's well tested. So the telecommunications industry, everything used to be custom. The hardware was custom, the software was custom. This gave a lot of security through obscurity, but it was all a bit roll your own crypto. These days it's much more commodity based. It's Linux VMs. So I have some faith in it. Somebody might want to ask about quantum, and the answer is yes, quantum breaks everything, if it ever works. There are defences against that too, but that's an entire talk in itself.
In the slides I saw that 2G is supposed to be closed by 2023, but 3G is already not used right now. At least shut off.
Depends where you are. So 3G has been shut down in some countries in Australia. In Ireland, the shutdown has started. Vodafone, I believe, has shut down their 3G, but 3, I believe, don't have any plans to shut it down anytime soon.
What's the reason? Like in some countries, it's 3G shut off, but 2G is not. What's the reason?
So there's lots of reasons. There's the cost of the equipment, but also there's coverage. So there's parts of Ireland that really effectively only have 3G. So even on the train between here and Dublin, my phone was switching to 3G at points.
Yes.
So it's for rural communities. No telco has 5G to more than 3/4 of the Irish population yet. So
because of the price and mainly the price of the equipment?
Well, it's price and it's time. 5G is much more energy efficient. 3G is very energy inefficient, which is why people are keeping 2G and shutting down 3G. Also, a lot of cheap equipment, IoT devices, rely on 2G rather than 3G and 4G. But it differs from country to country. But 1G 2017.
Yeah.
So there will still be countries using it, and maybe telcos will have to say, if you're roaming, you must be on 5G. But we're a long way from having coverage for 5G. So who was next?
Just to add on to that, it's also down to a lot of phones use 3G for SOS, I think it is, for certain applications, because Australia had that problem of shutting down their 3G networks and phones just...
Yeah. So the comment was that a lot of phones use 3G for SMS, even though they're nominally 4G phones.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's another reason that people don't want to move away from 3G, because they need to upgrade their phones. But over time, that will become less and less of an issue, because that's just a limitation in the phone. So 3G, 4G phones don't do proper 4G, but these phones are now 5 to 10 years old or more. So,
I'm just well to that, but I have a question. It's also just literally digital infrastructure, power slots. Say 5G sectors go up in place of 3G sectors. Different space in tower code.
Yeah.
The question, and it's sort of, excuse me, because it's sort of half-formed, but I'm just wondering what your thoughts are. You were talking about 5G and the fact that it tends to be web services and it's more secure. But if there is a significant risk surface or attack surface in the handoff between different delivery mechanisms. So handing over, say, the digital stations, switching over to Wi-Fi delivery, moving different frequency bands. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are in that space, bringing from a security perspective.
So one of the things you've probably never noticed about mobile phones is that they keep working when you're moving around. You can move from one base station to another base station and the phone will be handed over. And with 5G, you can also move between Wi-Fi and an actual phone call, and it will all continue. And the question was, does this introduce security risk? And I would have to say it increases the attack surface. How easy or hard that would be to exploit is a very interesting question, and I don't know. Do we have time for one more?
I think that might be all of it.
So you were waiting for a while?
Yeah. Do you think, because I suppose the security features of 5G, do you reckon that's why nations they've actually tried to gain access to the telecommunications providers themselves rather than intercepting the connection directly? So, yeah.
Sorry, I'm walking backwards and forwards. I'm half deaf. So the question was, is the security in 5G why we're seeing Chinese actors hacking American telcos? No, I think 5G is easy enough to get around with. What they're hacking them for is for records, billing records, so they can just collect all the metadata. It's all in one place. They can get access to lawful intercept systems. They can see who the lawful intercept systems have been used against, and they can use the lawful intercept systems themselves. So it's just, Willie, can't remember his surname, was asked why he robs banks, and he said that's where the money is. Why are telcos broken into? That's where the data is.
Thanks, man.